The teacher said, "You can sit anywhere." I looked around and nobody said anything. First grade. I just moved to a new, very, very white school where there was only a handful of Black people and a handful of POC, period. I came into the art class. The teacher said, "You can sit anywhere." I looked around and nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. And then you know who did? The other Black girl, the one Indian girl, and the one Latina dyed person. "You can sit with us." And all the Black and brown kids were at one table, and I was a part of them. "You can sit with us." I was a part of them. Early on, I had a feeling that I had to look out for the people who look like me. My friend group went by shade. Everybody brown, everybody Black, sat together. Third grade. They're showing civil rights documentaries in history class. We see Black people protesting, being sprayed with fire hoses by the Birmingham and Alabama sheriffs and police. The white kids in my class are laughing. Laughing. That was one of the moments that radicalized me. So many harmful and triggering images that are shown in schools. I mean, how many teachers realize that? There's a reason why you don't study the Holocaust until like later on in school when you're older, not in the third grade when you're only 8 years old, and they don't think you can handle Holocaust imagery. Why did the history teacher think he could handle seeing a Black man have his guts ripped open by an attack dog as he was non-violently protesting? As Black kids, we were living some form of racial traumas every day, or else we were relieved if nothing particularly happened on a particular day. You can't escape Blackness. But why is racial trauma reinforced in schools as a normative thing? I mean, why? Being able to articulate racialized trauma is something that people can't even start to do until high school. It's just like an added layer when you're younger. You can't be like, "I am uncomfortable and I can't even articulate why." 7th grade. We're studying the 1920s, the Jazz Age, and seeing a documentary footage of lynchings. Black men and some Black women, they were bruised, mutilated bodies dangling dead from nooses on trees. White mobs laughing, smiling, proudly posing for the camera. Some white people even brought their children. What they write on the postcard was the Saturday night barbecue. Our teachers show us the violence of lynching, but are instructed not to show us any films with what they call sexually explicit content. Why is the violence towards Black bodies openly shown to us, but bodies engaged in having sex or suggesting sex must be censored? Violence education is approved of. Meanwhile, sex education is taught so poorly, even at all. And until we covered the topic of Holocaust in Europe, there was no imagery like that shown in any other ethnic group in class. And the teachers emphasized that the Holocaust in Europe happened, well, in Europe, perpetrating in a foreign country. Violence education is approved of. In our classes, we were shown the imagery of violence suffered by Black Americans because it was studying history. I feel it is important to be mindful of those images and not just normalize them. For example, look at the violence in so many films, even cartoons. Think about it. So often, it's the most marginalized person who receives the worst violence towards them. You'll see bad guys, they're like punched out of the camera frame, but for some reason, when they happen to be Black, suddenly you see the blood, suddenly you see the death, suddenly you see it. We're also used to images of Black people suffering or perpetuating violence. It's so internalized. We're not even conscious of it. Realizing this early on was what radicalized me. Radicalized is being fully aware to question the bigger systems. I think it's hard because, especially as you grow up, you can't articulate why you're uncomfortable yet. That's why kids are so emotional. Babies and toddlers and little kids, they can't articulate their emotions. They can't communicate what they need. That's why they're always crying and stuff, because they're misunderstood. Once you're in school, you're told there's so many things about maturity and emotional intelligence that you do have to learn. Everybody has to learn. You have to learn how to communicate and say why you are sad. Learn to say I statements and all that. My I statements that I live with and that I am proud of. I identify as a Black American. I understand that I have light skin privilege. My community is the Black community. I feel I understand my intersectionality as a queer person. I identify as a theater, film, media writer, and artist. My community is the Black community. The teacher said, "You can sit anywhere." I looked around and nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. But you know who did? The other Black girl, the one Indian girl, and the one Latina dyed person. You can sit with us. And all the Black and brown kids were at one table, and I was a part of them. You can sit with us.